Her small hands clawed desperately at the leather belt digging into her neck, yet not a single scream came out. She couldn't scream. She was deaf and breathless. The kids around her froze as HOA Karen's face twisted with rage, yanking the belt tighter like she was punishing a grown criminal instead of a fragile 12-year-old girl. Her feet kicked against the pavement, her fingers trembling, her eyes begging for help, silent, terrified, fading. The world blurred around her. Parents shouted. A teacher dropped her coffee. Someone dialed 911 with shaking hands. And right there, as the girl's vision dimmed, a shadow appeared behind Karen. Boots. Cold. Military. Heavy. A woman's voice, calm, lethal, controlled, cut through the chaos like a blade. Drop the belt. Karen didn't know, but she had just laid hands on the daughter of a Navy SEAL, and her nightmare was only beginning. If you're watching this right now, I want you to take a deep breath, because what happened to my daughter that afternoon wasn't just an attack, it was a moment that exposed how cruel, careless, and downright dangerous some people can be when blinded by their own ego. Before I go any further, tell me which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far our community reaches, so drop your city in the comments. And hey, before we dive into this story, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, after everything you're about to hear, you're going to want to stay for the justice, the twists, and the truth that came out in the end. Now, let's go back to that day. The sun was warm, the air was peaceful, and kids were walking home like any other afternoon. My daughter, quiet, gentle, deaf, since the age of 3, was simply waiting for me like she always did. She's the kind of child who notices butterflies, not trouble. She communicates with her hands, her eyes, her smile. But that day, her smile never came home. Because someone, a grown woman, decided that my daughter standing on her side of the sidewalk was some kind of personal attack. That woman was Karen, the self-appointed HOA queen, the woman who policed the entire neighborhood like she owned every inch. And as ridiculous as it sounds, her rage didn't stay at shouting. It didn't stay at threats. It turned into something far darker, far more violent. A moment that could have taken my daughter's life. But Karen didn't know one thing. She didn't know who this little girl's mother was. And when I arrived, the entire street learned exactly what happens when a Navy SEAL's child is harmed. It started like the kind of afternoon you don't think twice about. The kind where the sun feels soft, not hot. The kind where parents feel safe letting their kids walk a few steps ahead. I remember checking my watch as I parked my car near the playground entrance. It was 3:07 p.m. My daughter, Lily, always waited near the maple tree beside the sidewalk, the same spot she chose every day because she liked the way sunlight passed through the leaves. She liked patterns, shapes, shadows. Her world wasn't filled with sound, but it was filled with color. And that's why what happened next still feels impossible, like the world went dark in a place that was supposed to be bright. Lily was standing there with her backpack hugged to her chest, tapping her fingers together, her way of keeping herself calm. A couple of kids were giggling nearby, tossing a ball. A golden retriever barked happily from across the street. Just another normal day, until she suddenly flinched like someone had stepped too close. I wasn't there yet, but I've replayed this moment in my mind 1,000 times because of what witnesses later told me. Karen, the HOA enforcer, the self-proclaimed protector of neighborhood order, marched down the street like she was on a mission sent from heaven itself. Except her mission wasn't holy. It wasn't righteous. It was petty, cruel, and dangerously unhinged. She started yelling first. Of course, Lily couldn't hear it. All she saw was a woman storming toward her, arms waving, face twisted in disgust. Witnesses said Karen shouted something about rules, something about blocking the path, something about kids these days thinking they can do whatever they want. And then she noticed Lily wasn't responding. That's when she got louder, closer, more aggressive. But Lily wasn't ignoring her. She simply couldn't hear. One mother tried to intervene, telling Karen, "She's deaf, leave her alone." But Karen shoved her hand out like she was swatting away a fly. "You parents always have excuses," she screeched. "She's standing where she shouldn't be." That's when it escalated. That's when everything spiraled into a nightmare. Karen didn't just yell. She didn't just threaten. She grabbed Lily. Grabbed her. A 12-year-old deaf girl. She seized her by the wrist, so hard the skin bruised instantly. A few kids gasped. A couple ran. But Karen wasn't done. She wanted control, the sick kind where she sees a child scared and powerless and feels powerful because of it. She reached for her belt. A thick leather belt, dark brown, cracked from years of wear. And before anyone could comprehend what was happening, she wrapped it around Lily's neck. Lily froze. Not even a whimper escaped her, because she didn't know what noise she was supposed to make. She'd never known what fear sounded like, only what it felt like. And in that moment, fear felt like fire inside her chest and ice in her fingertips. Karen yanked the belt tight, so tight that Lily's feet shifted, scrambling for balance. So tight that her backpack slid off her shoulder. So tight her face flushed red in seconds. The parents nearby screamed her name. Kids cried. Someone shouted they were calling the police. But Karen, blinded by her rage, hauled the belt even harder like she was taming an animal. "This is what happens when you don't follow the rules," she snapped. Her voice cracked with anger, not remorse. Lily's hands went to her neck, fingers trembling. Her eyes darted around, wide, pleading. But she couldn't speak. She couldn't hear instructions. She couldn't understand why this woman was hurting her. Her little body jerked as she tried to breathe, as she tried to stay upright. Her shoes scraped the pavement. Witnesses tried to rush forward, but Karen swung her arm wildly, screaming, "Back off! She needs to learn." One boy, God bless his courage, ran toward Lily anyway. Karen pushed him so hard he fell onto the sidewalk, scraping his elbow. That only made her pull the belt tighter. At 3:11 p.m., Lily's knees buckled. At 3:12 p.m., she started to collapse. Her vision blurred. Her hands weakened. Her body swayed. She thought she was dying. She thought she'd never see me again. She didn't know help was already on the way. Because at 3:13 p.m., I was pulling up to the corner. I remember seeing a small crowd, parents shouting, kids crying, people recording, some frozen in shock. My heart kicked into overdrive. I leaped out of my car, rushing toward them, not understanding what was happening until I heard someone scream, "She's choking the deaf girl. Somebody stop her." I didn't walk. I didn't jog. I ran faster than I had in years. But before I could reach them, a police officer who happened to be off duty sprinted in from the other side. He was closer. He lunged forward, grabbing Karen by the arm. I saw it, the exact moment the belt slipped loose from Lily's neck. Her knees hit the ground. Her hands fell limply. Her head wobbled. And I swear, for a split second, the world stopped spinning. I reached her just as she slumped sideways. I caught her before her head hit the pavement. Her face was flushed, tears streaking her cheeks, though she hadn't heard herself cry. Her breaths were the fragile, desperate kind. Shallow, shaky, terrified. I held her against me, whispering her name even though she couldn't hear it. My hands shook as I checked her neck, already bruising. My chest tightened as her fingers barely lifted to sign one word. "Mom." She didn't know if she was safe. She didn't know if I had seen what happened. She didn't know I was there. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Karen had crossed a line she could never uncross. And she had no idea at all, who she had just laid hands on. Because she didn't know she'd attacked the daughter of a Navy SEAL. And I wasn't about to let this go. When I lifted Lily into my arms, her breath fluttering like a candle about to go out, something inside me shifted. Not anger, not panic, something colder. Something that comes from training, from discipline, from years spent learning how to stay calm when everyone else falls apart. But even that discipline strained as I saw the belt still hanging from her neck, like a mark of ownership. Meanwhile, Karen, unbelievably, wasn't apologizing. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even shaken. She was arguing. Arguing with the off-duty officer who restrained her. Arguing with parents who saw everything. Arguing like she was the victim in all of this. This little brat was blocking the path, she snapped, tugging against the officer's grasp. She thinks she can do whatever she wants. These kids always. The officer cut her off sharply. "Ma'am, you strangled a child. Stand still." But Karen wasn't listening. Rage had consumed her so fully that she didn't even notice the trembling girl gasping for air just 10 feet away. Her eyes darted like she was still searching for someone else to punish. "This neighborhood is out of control," she raged. "I make one simple request, and everyone treats me like I'm the monster." "You are the monster," I thought, but I didn't say it out loud. Not yet. I was focused on Lily, her pulse, her breathing, the way her hands shook as she signed without control. The poor officer tried to call for backup, but Karen kept shifting, pulling, twisting like she thought she could still control the situation. Her obsession wasn't new. I'd heard about her before. The HOA complaints, the threats, the neighborhood meetings where she'd scream at parents about kids damaging grass, touching fences, breathing too loudly, for heaven's sake. But I never imagined she could escalate to violence. Not like this. Not toward a child who couldn't even understand what she was being accused of. Is she okay? Oh my God, is she breathing? A mother knelt beside us, pressing tissues into my hand. "She's trying," I whispered, checking Lily's eyes again. They were unfocused, scared, disoriented. Then she signed something slow, shaky. Her hand spelled out, "What did I do wrong?" My chest cracked open. "You did nothing, baby," I mouthed, my voice trembling even if she couldn't hear it. "Nothing." But Karen was still screaming her twisted narrative. She refused to move. She was ignoring me. Kids in this neighborhood don't respect rules. "She's deaf," someone finally snapped at her. "Are you insane? She couldn't even hear you." Karen froze for 1 millisecond, just one, before snarling, "Deaf or not, she should have paid attention." That was it. That was the moment the entire crowd collectively realized Karen wasn't misunderstood. She wasn't stressed. She wasn't having a bad day. She was dangerous, and she genuinely believed she had done nothing wrong. 2 more officers arrived, one helping to restrain Karen while the other approached me. "Ma'am, we need to assess her." But as he reached out, Lily jerked violently, flinching away. The belt had left more than physical wounds. The officer backed up, hands raised patiently. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt her." I nodded, stroking Lily's hair, helping her sign slowly so she understood they were trying to help. She leaned into me, silent tears slipping down her face. Meanwhile, Karen's meltdown transformed into full-blown hysteria. "Take your hands off me," she screamed. "I did nothing wrong. These parents baby their kids. This neighborhood used to be safe before all these outsiders moved in." That snapped something in me. I rose slowly, carefully, placing Lily against a nearby mother who offered to hold her. My footsteps toward Karen were deliberate, controlled. The officers saw the look in my eyes. One extended a hand cautiously. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but—" "I'm fine," I said quietly, too quietly. But inside, I was fighting a war between every instinct I'd ever honed. Karen looked at me then, really looked at me. Her lip curled in disgust. "Oh, you're the mother? Figures." "Figures?" She actually rolled her eyes at me, while being detained, as if she were scolding a toddler in Target. "What kind of parent just lets their kid wander around like that?" she spat. She should have known better than to stand where people walk. "I mean, is she stupid or—" I didn't let her finish. Not because I interrupted with words, but because the officer lost his patience before I did. "Ma'am, that's enough. You're being charged with assault and child endangerment." Karen's jaw fell open. "Me? Assault?" She was in the way. Her voice cracked with a hysterical, almost manic disbelief. Like she truly thought the world operated under her rules. Like she expected applause for hurting a child. Even the officers exchanged glances. "We've seen crazy, but this is another level kind of look." As they moved to place Karen in handcuffs, she thrashed, screamed, accused everyone around her. You all saw it. She was ignoring me. Kids like her shouldn't even be outside without supervision. Then, she made the fatal mistake. She actually lunged, toward Lily again, trying to grab the belt she'd dropped earlier. The officers were fast, but I was faster. I stepped between them, my training flooding back, my stance lowering instinctively. "Touch my daughter again," I said softly, "and I promise you'll regret it." Karen blinked, thrown off by the calmness in my voice. "What? Are you going to hit me?" she sneered. "You don't look like you can fight." The officer beside her muttered under his breath, "Oh, lady, wrong mother today." But Karen didn't hear him. She was too busy screaming, "You'll be hearing from the HOA. I run this neighborhood. I stepped closer, my eyes sharp enough to cut steel. "No," I whispered, "you don't run anything anymore." And that's when another mother whispered to the officer, "She doesn't know, does she?" "Know what?" he asked. "That the girl's mother," she nodded toward me, "is a Navy SEAL." Karen's face drained of color, but it was too late. Her obsession had exploded. Her mask had shattered. And justice? Justice was coming for her like a storm. Sirens weren't even there yet. The police were still trying to de-escalate Karen's shrieking tantrum. I was holding Lily against my chest, and half the neighborhood stood frozen in disbelief when everything took an even darker turn. Because people like Karen don't back down. They double down, especially when they feel cornered. And in Karen's twisted mind, she wasn't the attacker. She was the victim of disrespect, the defender of neighborhood values, the hero standing up for rules. So, as the officers tried to lead her toward the patrol car, she snapped her head toward one of them and screamed, "I know my rights." Then, in a move that made the entire world tilt sideways, Karen reached inside her oversized purse. At first, no one processed it. Not even me. Not even the officers. But then she pulled it out. A small black handgun. Shiny. Loaded. Fingers curled around the grip, like she'd practiced. The crowd gasped. A mother grabbed her toddler. Kids screamed. People ducked. A man yelled, "Gun! She has a gun!" And my entire body went cold. The two officers reacted, instantly shouting commands. "Drop the weapon. Put it down. Hands up now." But Karen wasn't listening. Her face twisted with rage, humiliation, and pure delusion. "You're not taking me to jail over some disrespectful child," she screeched. "She should have moved. She should have listened. This is MY neighborhood." She scanned the crowd for Lily. She spotted her. Behind me. And then, Karen raised the gun, pointed it directly toward my daughter. Time slowed. Everything went silent. Not metaphorically silent. I didn't hear screams, not really. I didn't hear officers yelling commands. All I heard was the thump of my own heartbeat, steady, controlled, trained. I'd been in situations like this before, but never with my child behind me. Never with a 12-year-old deaf girl clutching my jacket with trembling fingers. My instincts kicked in. Not fear, calculation. Distance, angle, timing. The trajectory of her arm. The shaky way she held the trigger. The 20 feet between us. The panicked civilians that could get caught in the crossfire. Lily's breath hitched against me. Her hands trembled against my arm, signing blindly without looking. "Mom, danger?" She couldn't hear the commands. She couldn't hear the screams. She only knew from the way my body shifted, the way I stiffened, the way the crowd panicked, that something was horribly wrong. I lowered myself, shielding her behind my body. I kept my hands visible to avoid escalating Karen further. But Karen, shaking, sweating, eyes wild, kept that gun pointed at us. "These kids need to learn respect," she barked. "And you're all going to listen. I'm done being ignored. Done." The officers tried negotiating. "Karen, put the gun down. No one is hurt. You don't want to do this." But she wasn't listening to logic. Her brain was drowning in indignation. She wasn't thinking about consequences. She wasn't thinking about police guns drawn on her. She wasn't thinking about witnesses or cameras or charges. She was thinking about one thing: power. Power she thought she'd lost when she was handcuffed. Power she wanted to take back, even if she had to aim a gun at a child. One officer whispered into his radio, trying to keep calm, She's pointing at the kid. We need backup now. The second officer moved slightly to the side, trying to create a distraction. Karen swung the gun toward him. Stop moving, she screeched. Then back at me. Back at Lily. You think you can threaten me? I know what you people are like. Her finger tightened on the trigger. I saw it, the subtle tension in her knuckles, the slight tremor before someone commits, the moment where milliseconds decide life or death. My training screamed 2 options: neutralize or shield. I chose both. I whispered to Lily even though she couldn't hear me. Close your eyes. I shifted my weight forward. Ready. Prepared to close the distance if Karen's finger moved another fraction. Prepared to take a bullet before letting it reach my daughter. But then something changed. A sound. A voice. Not loud, but commanding enough to cut through the madness. Karen. It was the off-duty officer's partner, a seasoned cop who'd just arrived. He didn't shout. He didn't panic. He spoke like he was talking to a child holding a fragile object. Karen, this ends now. Karen's lip trembled, but her hand stayed firm on the gun. I'm not going to jail, she whispered. You can't make me. The officer took a slow step. You threatened a child. She disrespected me, Karen barked. She wasn't listening. She's deaf, he said, voice breaking for the first time. You almost killed her. Karen's eyes flickered, confusion, denial, anger, then nothing. She wasn't processing reality anymore. She should have moved, she screamed. This is all her fault. And that was it. That was the moment she fully committed. I saw the micro-movement, the twitch, the squeeze beginning in her index finger. I lunged. A trained, controlled movement, fast, low, explosive. I shoved Lily behind a concrete trash barrier with my left arm while pushing forward with my right. Karen startled. The gun jerked. A shot cracked the air. A split-second thunder. The bullet hit the asphalt, inches from where Lily had been. Sparks flew. Civilians screamed. And in that same instant, before Karen could fire again, the officers tackled her. Hard. The gun skidded across the pavement, clattering near a storm drain. Karen shrieked hysterically as she hit the ground. You can't do this. I was defending myself. Let me go. They handcuffed her. Tighter this time. 2 officers pinned her arms. One pressed her shoulders down. It's over, the senior cop said, panting. It's over, Karen. But Karen kept screaming, voice cracking with hatred and delusion. This is all her fault. That deaf girl ruined everything. The officer slammed the patrol car, door shut, cutting her off mid-rant. Silence, real silence, finally settled. People cried. People hugged each other. Neighbors held their kids close. I crawled to the trash barrier, pulling Lily into my arms. She looked at me with tear-glossed eyes, shaking violently. She signed one broken word, gun. I nodded slowly, pressing my forehead to hers. You're safe now. Safe, but forever changed. Because the horror Karen unleashed wasn't over. It was only the beginning. And the truth behind that horror, the reason she snapped, the reason she targeted Lily, the dark secret she hid, was about to surface. By the time the gunshots echo faded and Karen was shoved into the patrol car, the world still hadn't returned to normal. People were crying, shaking, whispering in shock. But everything around me felt distant, muffled, unreal. I held Lily tightly, feeling her heartbeat trembling against my chest like a trapped bird. Her small hands signed desperately disoriented. Why me? Did I do bad? Mom's scared. I signed back slowly, controlling my breathing, keeping my hands steady for her sake. No, you did nothing wrong. You're safe now. I'm here. But inside me, another storm was brewing. The kind with lightning instead of tears. The kind that comes out when your child almost dies in your arms. Police sirens finally filled the air, a rush of blue and red lights painting the street. Paramedics hurried over, checking Lily's neck, her pulse, her oxygen levels. She flinched from every unfamiliar hand, every sudden touch. And then, another car screeched to a halt. A dark navy SUV. The door flew open, and out stepped her father. Jake, her rock. My husband, calm, steady, controlled, until he wasn't. He sprinted toward us with a speed fueled by terror, not training. His eyes were wide, jaw clenched, breath shallow. When he saw the bruises on Lily's neck, deep, raw, purple bruises shaped like a belt, something inside him broke. Lily, he choked, falling to his knees beside her. She collapsed into his arms, shaking as she signed frantically against his chest. Mom, save me. Lady hurt me. Gun. Jake froze. His body went rigid, the kind of stillness that precedes a storm. He looked at me, voice barely audible. What happened? And so I told him. Not every detail. There wasn't time. Just enough for the fury to ignite behind his eyes. The belt, the choking, the gun, the near shot. His breathing changed, slower, deeper, more controlled. But his hands curled into fists so tight, his knuckles blanched white. Jake wasn't military like me, but he wasn't helpless. He was built like stone, protective to his bones. A good man, but a man with a line you never crossed. And Karen had crossed it with both feet. Where is she? He asked quietly, dangerously quietly. I pointed to the patrol car. The door was closed, windows up, Karen inside, screaming muffled insults. Jake stood, his shoulders squared, his jaw tightened, his eyes locked on the car like a predator. One officer saw the look in his eyes and stepped forward. Sir, I understand you're upset, but... She put her hands on my kid? Jake cut in, his voice too calm to be safe. She choked her. She pointed a gun at her. The officer swallowed. Yes. Jake inhaled sharply. Open the door. The officer blinked. Sir, I said open the door. The officer took a tiny step back, because even he felt the intensity radiating off Jake, but shook his head. I can't do that, sir. She's in custody. Jake lifted his chin, eyes narrowing. Then she's lucky. The officer hesitated, then asked, Sir, what do you do for work? Jake didn't answer, because he didn't have to. I stepped forward instead, placing a gentle hand on his arm. He's not military, I said, but he's a father. The officer nodded, understanding more in that moment than words could explain. He didn't move to block Jake again. He simply stepped aside. Jake approached the patrol car slowly, measured, silent. Inside, Karen paused mid-rant when she saw him coming. Her face twisted into disgust. Oh, great, another one of you people. You almost killed my daughter, Jake said softly. Too softly. Karen scoffed. She shouldn't have stood where she didn't belong. I was only... You strangled her. You terrified her. You pointed a gun at her. Karen rolled her eyes so hard it was almost theatrical. Oh, please. Everyone is exaggerating. I was defending myself. That brat attacked me. I took one step closer. She's deaf, Karen. She couldn't hear you shouting. Karen shrugged. Not my problem. She should have learned to pay attention. That was it. That was the last thread holding Jake's self-control in place. I saw his entire posture change, shoulders back, chest rising slow, fists clenching once then relaxing, the way a man prepares to break someone but forces himself to wait for the right moment. The officers subtly moved closer, not to restrain him, but to be ready if Karen escalated again. Jake leaned slightly, his voice low, lethal. You look at her again, he murmured, and the only thing you'll hear is the judge reading your sentence. Karen laughed, a high, sharp, unhinged sound. You think you're so tough, she spat. You think your little family scares me? I run this neighborhood. I make the rules. My HOA has power. And you. She jabbed a finger at me through the window. You think being in the military makes you special? You're nothing. I don't care what force you're in. The officer beside the patrol car muttered under his breath, Oh, lady, stop talking, just stop talking. But Karen wasn't done. She smirked, smug, proud, delusional. What are you going to do? She taunted. Beat me up? Threaten me? You military people always think you're heroes. Guess what? Not everyone respects you. Jake didn't say a word. I did, stepping into her line of sight, letting her get a clear look at the truth she'd been ignoring all day. You didn't just attack a deaf child, I said quietly. You attacked a Navy SEAL's daughter. Karen blinked, then blinked again. Her smirk faltered. Her face drained of all color. What? She whispered. No, you're lying. You're lying. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stared. Cold. Unforgiving. Silent. Karen looked between me, the officers, then Jake, and for the first time since the entire incident began, fear flushed across her face. Real fear. I didn't know, she stammered. I thought she was just a child. I snapped. A deaf girl you thought you could bully? Karen's lip trembled. I didn't mean... But I stepped closer. And that's the problem. You never mean it. You just do it. Jake put his hand on my shoulder. Not to calm me, but to stand with me. Karen pressed herself against the back seat, shrinking for the first time. Because she knew. This time her HOA rules couldn't save her. This time, she wasn't the one with power. This time, she attacked the wrong family. And the hidden truth behind Karen's rage, the reason she targeted Lily, the secret she'd been hiding for years, was about to come out. For most people in our neighborhood, what Karen did seemed like a sudden explosion, a moment of madness, a switch flipped for no reason. But the truth is, explosions don't happen without pressure, and monsters don't appear without a story behind them. After Karen was taken away, the officers asked us to stay for statements. Neighbors gathered in tight clusters, whispering, shaking their heads. Parents comforted their kids. Paramedics kept checking Lily's breathing and blood pressure. Her neck was badly bruised, but stable. Jake held her with both arms, rubbing her back gently as she tucked her face into his chest. She refused to let go of us. Then Officer Reyes, the senior one, approached us with a conflicted expression. Ma'am. Sir, before we take full statements, there's something you need to know. Something about Karen. I exchanged a look with Jake. What is it? The officer sighed like the truth was a weight he'd been carrying for too long. She's been on our radar for months, maybe years. He glanced back at the patrol car, where Karen sat silently now, staring at her reflection with hollow eyes. Karen's not just an HOA problem, he said quietly. She's dangerous, obsessed, paranoid, and this wasn't random. What do you mean? Jake asked, tightening his hold around Lily protectively. Reyes lowered his voice. Karen targeted your daughter. Jake's jaw tightened. My stomach dropped. How? The officer rubbed the back of his neck, hesitant. Look, we can't release all details of her medical records, but she's been reported multiple times for erratic behavior, property aggression, and violent outbursts. Her HOA was basically her only sense of control. When she lost it, she spiraled. He paused, then added the part that froze my blood. We found records of complaints she filed against your daughter specifically. What? I snapped. She doesn't even know my daughter. He shook his head. She thinks she knows everything about everyone. She's been writing down names, tracking daily habits, logging infractions that exist only in her mind. He pulled out a small sealed envelope. We recovered this from her HOA binder today after the arrest. She has pages, literal pages, about your child. Inside were photocopies. Times Lily stood on the sidewalk. Notes, like doesn't respond to authority, disrupts the tranquility, refuses to obey simple instructions, and circled in red ink, danger to community order. I felt sick. Jake's breathing sharpened. Lily clutched my sleeve like she could sense our tension, even if she couldn't hear the conversation. She's 12, Jake growled. She's a child, a deaf child. How could she? Reyes raised a hand gently. That's not all. My heart hammered. Keep talking. Karen's delusion didn't stop at written notes. She had convinced herself that Lily's silence, her calmness, her stillness were personal acts of defiance. That a child not responding to her voice was mocking her. That Lily's inability to hear commands was intentional. That her disability was faked to escape responsibility. She twisted innocence into opposition. She took quietness as rebellion. She turned a little girl into an enemy in her mind. Reyes continued, She reported your daughter 3 separate times for noncompliance. We dismissed them because they made no sense. But today everything clicked. I stared at him, my pulse roaring in my ears. She attacked her because she thought she was disobedient. She attacked her, Reyes corrected softly, because she needed someone she could control. Jake stood taller, his voice low and cold. She chose the wrong family. But the officer shook his head. No, she didn't just choose the wrong family. She chose the easiest target. That hit me hard, because he was right. In Karen's warped worldview, a deaf girl wouldn't argue back. A child wouldn't fight. A quiet kid wouldn't resist. She wanted power. She wanted dominance. She wanted someone who couldn't scream, couldn't shout for help. She wanted victory. And she thought Lily was the perfect victim. My eyes burned with a fire I hadn't felt in years. All my training, all my discipline, all my instinct, everything in me screamed that this woman didn't just hurt my child. She hunted her. Jake took a step closer to Reyes. So what happens now? Reyes exhaled slowly. Charges will be severe. Child endangerment, assault, attempted murder, especially because she pointed a gun at a minor. My jaw clenched. She shouldn't be allowed within a mile of my child. She won't be, he reassured. But there's more you should know. He hesitated, then said it. Karen's husband left 2 months ago. Took their daughter. Filed restraining orders. She lost custody. Lost control. And she's been unraveling ever since. That explained the desperation, the rage, the unhinged cling to rules and authority. But it didn't excuse a thing. It didn't undo the bruises on my daughter's neck. It didn't erase the terror in her eyes. Reyes continued. We suspect she projected her anger onto any child who reminded her of losing hers. Lily, my Lily, small, soft, gentle Lily. A trigger in Karen's broken psyche. A replacement for the child she lost. Someone she could overpower when she felt powerless. A scapegoat for her collapsing life. I swallowed hard, steadying my breath. Officer, what will happen to her HOA position? He gave a humorless chuckle. Oh, that's already over. Her entire HOA board voted an emergency removal this afternoon. They're done protecting her. Good. Very good. Because monsters don't need positions of authority. They need consequences. Jake looked at me. I knew that look. We weren't just parents right now. We were protectors. And then from behind us, a small tug on my sleeve. Lily, eyes red, hands trembling, signing something slow, careful, hopeful. Is she gone forever? My throat tightened. Jake bent beside her, guiding her hands gently. Yes, he signed. Forever. But inside, I knew the chapter wasn't closed yet. Justice had only begun. Healing hadn't started. And what came next would be the moment that defined us all. The sun had long begun to set when everything finally calmed down. Police cars rolled away one by one, neighbors hugged their kids and went home, and the streets slowly returned to a strange, unsettling quiet. But for us, nothing felt normal. Not the breeze, not the sky, not even the familiar sidewalk where Lily always waited. We stayed outside the ambulance for a long time. Lily refused to let go of my hand or Jake's shirt. She kept looking around with wide, fearful eyes, like she expected Karen to jump out from behind a car or come rushing back with another weapon. Trauma steals certainty from a child, and in the hours that followed, we watched her innocence crack. The paramedic knelt gently in front of her, speaking slowly so I could sign to Lily. She's stable. Her airway is okay. The bruising will hurt for a while, but she's safe. Safe. A word that used to feel simple. Now it felt like something we had to rebuild from the ashes. We took her home, wrapped her in her favorite blanket, sat her between us on the couch. She leaned into us like a small bird, exhausted but afraid to sleep. We made her hot chocolate, printed her favorite drawing pages, and gave her space to sign whatever she needed. Her hands moved slowly at first. Mom, Dad, why me? Jake exhaled shakily. I swallowed hard before signing back. Because she was wrong. You were not. Did she hate me? No. She didn't understand. That's not your fault. Gun loud. Jake nodded. Very loud. But you are alive. You are home. You are safe. The moment he signed safe, Lily reached forward, placed her tiny hands on his cheeks, and mouthed the word back to him even though she'd never heard it. It broke both of us. We held her as she cried silently. No sound came out, but the pain in her small body was louder than any scream. A deaf child's tears have a different kind of heartbreak. There's no sob, no wail, no audible release. Only shaking shoulders, gasping breaths, and trembling fingers searching for comfort. We stayed with her all night. One of us always stayed awake, just in case she opened her eyes and panicked. Because trauma doesn't sleep, especially not after almost dying. 2 weeks later, we found ourselves sitting in a courtroom, not because we wanted revenge, but because justice deserved light. Karen sat at the defense table, looking smaller than before, but still burning with indignation. When she saw us walk in, she glared. When she saw Lily, her eyes flickered with something between regret and resentment, but definitely not remorse. The prosecutor read the charges: assault on a minor, intentional strangulation, attempted murder, use of a firearm in a crime, endangering a disabled child, threatening harm. Karen's face twisted with every count. But the worst part? She still couldn't accept responsibility. She muttered under her breath the entire time. She didn't listen. She ignored me. She stood where she shouldn't. Her lawyer whispered for her to be quiet, but she wouldn't. Her obsession hadn't faded. It had simply shifted into self-pity. When the judge called for statements, Jake stood first. He wasn't loud. He wasn't dramatic. He didn't posture. He simply said one sentence: "You tried to take my daughter's life over a sidewalk." And the silence that followed swallowed the entire courtroom. Then I stood. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I didn't speak as a Navy SEAL. I spoke as a mother. You saw a deaf child as someone you could dominate. You saw quietness as defiance. You saw innocence as disrespect. And you decided to teach her a lesson. That wasn't discipline. That wasn't frustration. That was cruelty. Karen's jaw clenched. Her foot tapped violently under the table. She wanted to lash out, but the judge's stare pinned her down. Then I added the last sentence, the one that made every parent in the room nod through tears. You didn't break my daughter, but she will forever remember the day she learned some adults don't protect children, they prey on them. Karen looked away. For the first time, she couldn't hold anyone's gaze. Karen was convicted on all major charges. The judge ordered psychiatric evaluation, long-term imprisonment, and a permanent ban from any HOA leadership positions. She wasn't allowed near children, schools, playgrounds, or our neighborhood ever again. When the verdict was read, Jake squeezed my hand, but the real closure wasn't the sentence. The real closure came from Lily. She tugged my sleeve gently and signed, "She can't hurt me?" I knelt. "No, baby. She can't." She thought for a long moment, then signed something that made tears spill down my face. "I strong." I kissed her forehead. "You're the strongest girl I've ever met." The neighborhood changed after that day. People were kinder, more protective of each other. Parents approached Lily in ways she understood. Kids learned a little sign language just to talk to her. And she blossomed. Slowly, cautiously, bravely. For weeks, she'd press her hand to her neck and ask if the marks were fading. For months, she'd flinch when someone walked behind her. But each day, she stood a little taller, spoke a little more with her hands, smiled a little more easily. She even went back to the sidewalk under the maple tree. And the first day she stood there again, she looked at me and signed. Not scared. I brave now. Yes, she was. Before this story ends, I want to speak directly to you, the viewer. If you're watching this, if you've made it this far, then hear me clearly. Never stay silent when you see a child in danger. Never assume someone else will step in. Never ignore the warning signs of a person who uses power to hurt the vulnerable. Lily survived because people acted, because neighbors cared, because justice mattered. So right now, comment below. What city are you watching from? Would you have stepped in that day? Your voice matters more than you know. And before you go, subscribe to this channel. Not for me, not for views, but because stories like this remind us that courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's silent, like my daughter, and still unbelievably strong. Let's stand with every child who can't speak for themselves. Let's make sure no Karen gets the power to hurt them again. Justice isn't just a moment, it's a community, and you're part of it now.